Hello, everybody, and welcome into today's episode of the Top Cut Yu-Gi-Oh! Podcast. My name is Sunny. I am your host. I am here with my co-host, Caleb.
Hello.
And we are joined by a very special guest, the one and only HakunaMyData. What is going on, dude?
Hey, thanks for having me.
So, before we get too far in, I am just going to run really quick through our Patreons and things like that. So, we of course want to thank Cam Yang, Austin Johnson, Salix, Kane, Martin, Gate Guardian Support, HGH Cyber, Marshawn Jones, Witchcrafter May 2022, Zyphorus, Zephirius, AD, Aaron Gardner, Anthony Leela, Branded Fart, Brandon, Cult of the Eldritch Gummy Bear, Damian Zink, Dank Nugs, Invoked Fart, Mountain Man, Nico Gal, Number 1 Bottom Text. Y'all are so wild. Oatmeal Spaghetti, Owen Alvarado, Pig, Rudolph, Sneaky Links. Sunny used Stubbornness. It was super effective. You're not wrong. Unbanned number 95, Konami, Virtually Savior's World. What does Pot of Greed do? Yadagarasu is my spirit, dual spirit. Zingus Khan, Aluber the Goober, Get Kaiju, the loser, Max Seesaws combo, Nordic Best Deck, Old Man Red, Ray Powell, Shockmaster did nothing wrong, and Slaking it up. Thank you all for your continued support of the podcast, and I gotta say, I am enjoying these names more and more by the week. They are, every time we read off those patron names, and they change. They change every week, and it's just so funny. So, and of course, we also want to remind everybody to, if you're shopping for singles or sealed product, check out our TCG Player affiliate link. And if you're shopping for some sleeves or things like that, be sure to check out our Dragon Shield affiliate link. You can hear that wonderful hand shuffle in action. Yep, it sounds great, and the cards feel great. Every time I sleeve up some Dragon Shields, they feel wonderful. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get on into the actual meat of the content. So James, why don't you tell people, before we get too far in, a little bit about your channel, the things that you put out on your channel, and how you cover different things.
Sure. So I started my channel almost 2 years ago. I started end of July in 2020. And so originally I actually started out purely as like a Cyber Dragon channel. At the time that I started my channel, I only had ideas for a few videos in terms of how to play Cyber Dragons, rulings, that sort of stuff, and I thought that was going to be it for my channel. But then eventually I decided to try to produce some kind of data related content. So nowadays a lot of my videos, it's more on a monthly basis. You know, these meta analysis of top ranked players on Dueling Book, what they're playing, some of the win percentage for some of the most played decks, as well as I recently started doing sort of these tier lists using Dueling Book data as well. And also I would say another common data content would be something like the most played hand traps and staples and topping lists from YCS or LCS or nationals, for example, like that. And occasionally I do some survey videos. One of my favorite videos actually is before every banlist season, doing a prediction survey and getting people's results and showing what those results are. So that's sort of a gist of my channel. Mostly data content at this point. I do still provide some Cyber Dragon content at least once a month. But yeah, sort of two completely different sides of the game.
Yeah, for sure. So I think it would be fair to say that to do the coverage that you do, you have to be pretty insightful, or at least know a little bit about what's going on within the metagame as a whole, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I certainly try my best. I would say my weakness as a player is that I personally find that I don't have as much time to play too much nowadays, especially having to create videos now on top of course, I actually work full-time. Something else YouTube is just on the side for fun, as well as playing. And then you also want to, for example, I want to spend time with my girlfriend. So so that's why typically I've always only played Cyber Dragons, because it was just the one deck that I knew pretty well. And only recently I started playing another deck. So I try my best to learn the meta that way in terms of just going against all the other decks, rather than, ideally you want to actually play all the tier 1 decks so you know what they do more thoroughly. So that's sort of my weakness. And then doing these meta-analysis of top-ranked players, it certainly helps just seeing what these top-ranked players are playing, because they end up actually being a sort of good predictor for what's actually going to do well at in-person events.
Right, right.
And then just like seeing what all these deck lists and just like actually counting, how often certain hand traps are played or staples are played. It gives a pretty good sense. But I certainly could do a better job at understanding the meta if I actually took more time to play, especially different decks.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from. The interesting thing about being a content creator and wanting to play the game is that there's a delicate balance between living your normal personal life and putting out content for all of your viewers or listeners in our case, and also putting out you're being able to like attend tournaments and go out and play and then play test before a big tournament and things like that. It's a really delicate balance to be able to hit all of those things.
For sure. And for example, so this coming Saturday, I actually have the very first regionals. Like in Toronto, it's the first in-person regionals since the pandemic started. And
Right.
I just have not had much time to test at all. And honestly, at this point, I just feel like I'm probably going to not do very well anyways because I haven't tested much. And I'm also balancing like whether I should start working on a meta-analysis video for June, like this week, or wait until after regionals. But now at this point, I'm thinking maybe I just do it this week anyways, even though it reduces the little time I already had for testing, just because I'm not even sure if I would do well anyways. Because yeah, so it's like a balance because you also want to have a pretty consistent schedule, right? Like I want to be able to post at least once a week. And so if I put this off till after regionals, then it becomes like almost like 2 weeks since my last video. And so yeah, it's sort of balance.
So, and that's not to say though that you haven't had any success before though. I think you topped one of the remote duel YCSs, right?
Yeah, so that was really wild. I didn't expect to do well. And I was just like flabbergasted. I remember I started like 6-0 and I'm like, oh, you know what? Okay. Because originally I was like a lot of people. That was the very first remote YCS and you were guaranteed like a playmat and I forget what else for entry. Oh, field center, I guess, on top of your pack. So I was like, okay, like maybe I'll just play like the 3 rounds and drop, just get my stuff. But I ended up doing really well. And so prior to that, I attended only one YCS in my life, which was Niagara. That was 2019. So, and I guess I should clarify, I started playing competitively beginning of 2019. So I actually played longer in the pandemic than I have in real life. So
Fair.
I think I played in 4 regionals in my life as well. So I haven't actually had many opportunities for competitive events. So yeah. It's ironic because I topped the YCS, but I've never topped a regional before. So hopefully and I had set out all these like baby step goals to get there in terms of like, oh, okay, let's like top a regional, then let's try making day 2 at a YCS and then maybe eventually top a YCS. But ironically, I ended up hitting my final goal first and then now I gotta work backwards, I suppose.
Well, I think that for what it's worth, you should keep up your current pace and just forget regionals and just keep topping YCSs.
Yeah, I mean, for me, though, I'm not much of a person to travel for events. Niagara is the only YCS, basically, I would ever be attending. So I live in Toronto. Niagara Falls is about, like, an hour and 20 minutes, maybe, drive. So that's certainly reasonable for me. And sadly, that's the only YCS in Canada. Hopefully, they eventually bring some more.
Well, so what you're saying is we're going to see you at YCS Niagara this September, right?
Oh, you guys got... Yeah, for sure. I'll certainly be there.
Yeah, well, Caleb's not going, but I'm flying up from Louisiana.
Okay, how long is the flight for that one?
I catch my plane at 5:40 in the morning in New Orleans. So I drive 4 hours to New Orleans the night before. Oof. And then I catch my plane at 5:40 in the morning. And then I fly to Baltimore, and then from Baltimore to Buffalo, and then drive 45 minutes, or about basically an hour once you cross the border, from Buffalo to Niagara.
Wow, that's commitment.
I'll get there. I'll get to the airport at probably like 4:45 in the morning, and I'll get to Niagara around noon.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, and then on the way back, I get to the airport at 5 in the morning. In Buffalo, and then I have to so I'll leave the Airbnb at like 4 a.m. get to the airport at 5, and then I won't get home until like 7 or 8 p.m.
Oof.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. commitment.
And then work the next day. It's better than
wow.
Charlotte. We drove overnight from Charlotte to Charlotte, 13 and a half hours.
Oh, I think I read your tweets on that journey. Yeah, no, that's great.
Yeah, it was a journey, all right. So I would love to get into a little bit more of the actual meta-analysis and breakdown that we have promised per the episode title and such at this point, I'm sure. So we have a really interesting results from YCS Hartford, which was this past weekend. So a top 32 breakdown consisted of 7 Sword Soul Tenyi, 7 Punk, which was 3 Adventure and then 2 Therian, and then 6 Branded, which was 4 Despia branded and 2 Eldritch branded, 3 Fluanderees, 3 Sky Striker, one of which was an Adventure and one of which won the event.
Right.
Then you had 2 Drytron, 1 Adagnister, 1 Dddd, 1 Dragon Link Adventure, and 1 ABC Adventure, which that deck actually went undefeated in Swiss.
Ooh.
And then he suffered from the undefeated curse and he lost in Top Cut. But still very, very, very cool list. And I gotta say, this is a really cool breakdown in my opinion. I think that despite there being basically 3 decks that control the top of the meta, it's really interesting to see how diverse the meta actually is right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, certainly the Obelisk structure decks near the end of last format really made it better for the format.
Oh, obviously.
Yeah.
Obelisk structure decks?
Yeah, Obelisk Tormentor?
Like the Obelisk structure, or Obelisk Strike, right? Like where Branded Despia became like essentially...
Oh, the Despia. Albaz.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought you said the Obelisk structure deck.
Oh,
I was like,
no. Oh, that's
did
terrible.
I miss something?
I forgot about that one.
Okay. Yeah. The Albaz structure deck definitely shook up the meta a lot, but you would think that with the release of that Despia structure deck plus the ban list, everybody just kind of assumed that Despia was far and away the best deck, but really when you look at it, between the regional tops and what you see from the YCS, it's really not that clear cut. I mean, a huge percentage of regional tops and the actual tops from the event were Sword Soul.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting that we have so much Sword Soul in the format after they took basically a hit with the banning of Aurora.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's been an interesting journey for Sword Soul, because I remember as I was doing these meta-analysis when Sword Soul first became tier 1, it was just like by far the most played deck, and then eventually it just lost in favor quite a bit, and then it was just more so like Tenyi piles that people were playing, the 60 card with the Brave token engine and everything. And then now, as the format for the last format was nearing its end, Sword Soul became once again popular, and then now it's essentially like arguably, I guess, the best deck in terms of representation. Certainly really, really consistent. And I'm at least glad they don't have Protoss anymore. Back then, that was really rough to play against. But it's still like a fair deck. Same with Branded Despia as well.
Yeah, I could not imagine having to deal, other people having to deal with Sword Soul with Protoss. I play Sword Soul, so okay. I would be fine with it. But my poor opponents.
And the punk stuff is really cool too. That's now with the Regulus, and it's really interesting. I was just at Locals the other Friday, and I saw my friend playing like the punk theory, and it's like, man, it's actually pretty impressive.
Yeah,
like good grind game, sets up a good turn 1 board. It's and like just like the field spell is pretty good in terms of battle protection. It's a little like unique in that sense.
The Punk Therian deck it really caught me off guard. It kind of came out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
I actually me and Kayla went to a case tournament this past weekend, and my only loss in Swiss was to Adventure Punk Therian.
Mm-hmm.
And
Bruh.
that deck is crazy.
My round 1 was against at least Punk Theory, and I didn't see him play any of the adventure stuff. And he would end on a board of like, let's see, it was Regulus, Jet Synchron, Hot Red Dragon Archfiend, Abyss, the one that target negates, and Hulk. And then after they would do their Red Dragon Archfiend negate, they tag the Hulk of Firebrax out into a Formula Synchron and make King Calamity.
There's also
the 4K.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt there.
Yeah, King Calamity, the 4K beat stick who makes it where you can't activate cards or effects.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That card's crazy.
And there's like another lock available in this deck where essentially it's like with Hulk, it brings out, I forget the name, it's some Naturia monster that's a tuner, and it's essentially like your opponent can only activate one spell or trap card for the turn. And then
Rose Whip.
Oh yeah. Since Therian King negates effects, and it's it's pretty funny too.
Yeah, it's a really good deck. I've seen the Rose Whip more in the Plant Link deck, which surprises me that we saw 0 tops from that deck at the YCS. That deck is really good.
Yeah, I think maybe people came over prepared for it possibly, and it just couldn't get any gas going.
Was that the one that Jesse and Pac were playing, like branded Predaplant, or is that different?
No, so there's a Plant Link deck running around that's built around the Sun Avalon engine.
Okay.
And it ends on a board with the Naturia Rose Whip that you were talking about, plus the Therian Regulus, and with Lily equipped to it. And it also ends on like 1 or 2 other negates and pops. Like it actually ends on a crazy board. It ends on literally like 5 interruptions. Yeah, the Plant Link deck really is crazy. I think it might be just a little bit fragile, but I know that it made some noise topping some regionals last weekend or the weekend before. I know that Trell from Team APS topped a regional in Mississippi with it. That was, like I said, that was last weekend. So not this past weekend, but the weekend before.
Right.
So it's definitely a good deck that's worth looking at, but it's like I said, it says a lot that it's not in the top cut here of the YCS, I think.
It might just be a little too sensitive to getting hand trapped.
Potentially.
Yeah.
But so we have Swordsoul Tenyi representing 7 of top cut, and we have Punk representing also 7 of top cut at the YCS. And then we get into the branded engine and the branded deck, really. It's not...
Yeah.
It's interesting that the branded deck is evolving the way it is. Like you mentioned, it has the Predaplant engine being teched into it. And so it cuts down on some of the Despia cards and adds in a lot of the Predaplant cards. And we didn't see any of them top, but we did see a lot of buyouts caused by it.
Yeah, I saw that.
The deck is good, but I honestly think that pure branded running the Patchwork engine and running Allures might be a little bit more consistent. I think that it's just a little bit more subject to Droll and Lockbird. So it would be interesting to see the usage of Droll and Lockbird right now, because I think that it's a very, very underestimated card right now.
Yeah, so, and it's interesting because as I do these like hand trap videos and like whatever topping lists, Droll has been falling the last few months, I would say, even though at one point it was always sort of like, the most played hand trap, for example, depending on the format. But I think, you're right, it certainly can be pretty good. Punk Theory, and if I recall, it's actually quite vulnerable to Droll as well. And then Drytron, if they're coming back too, because of Ben 10 at 2, of course Droll is certainly good. And Flunder, it's technically good, except when they have Shifter, then you can't use it, which is why it's so unfortunate. Same thing with Ogre too. So yeah, otherwise it certainly be good against Flunder, because it's hard to play against Flunder if they have Shifter in general.
Right. And I think it's really interesting to see how those cards like Droll and Ogre and Nib have really fallen hard out of the format. But I think at the end of the day, what you have to think about is it makes sense that Ogre is falling out of the format because it's okay against Sword Soul, and with less adventure running around, it's not quite as powerful.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
But Nib, in a time where nobody is respecting Nib because of its not being prevalent in the format, if anything, that makes it better than ever.
Yeah. Because people aren't bothering to put out the negate before summon 5, because people don't respect the nibs, so you can on summon 5 you can really punish them.
Yeah, and I see a lot of Sword Soul players getting really greedy and going for the draw 2 line, and it's really just, it's not worth getting turbo nibbed over.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought it up because I was actually surprised myself when I was doing the breakdown of most played hand traps for the Nats. It was just before the YCS this past weekend, and Nip was actually like the third most played hand trap. And at a time where you would think, okay, like Branded Despia, it's not really good against it. Flunder doesn't do anything, but yeah, it's like catching people off guard and just good against combo decks in general. So
yeah, for sure. So we also have 3 Fluanderies. Flunder is an interesting deck here to me because I guess without these decks running multiple shooting risers now because of the ban list and not really trying to send Necro World Banshee to utilize with Zombie World, Flunder has kind of come back into the format with a vengeance. But I know that 3 of them top the YCS, but I can't convince myself that it's good.
It might have been more. It might have been less the deck in those 3 cases, and more the duelist.
Potentially. What were you gonna say?
Yeah. I mean, so in terms of the Banshee, though, a lot of people are still playing it because of branded fusion. They would still send that and Albus to someone like Lubellion.
Yeah.
You still have the Banshee. That's personally what I'm doing as well. One of my decks. But yeah, I mean, Flunder, it has a high like floor, if you know what I mean. It's like it'll always do like pretty well. Like it's just
it'll always do something.
Yeah, it's like super consistent, and it just, I mean, it has cards like Featherstorm, D-Shifter, and Windberry Statue, which are just like really blowout cards. Against a lot of decks.
That's some super aggressive cards.
Yeah, exactly. And also, it's like a fairly budget deck. So in terms of like IRL events, I mean YCS, I mean people are traveling for these events. They're most likely, doesn't matter how much the deck is, they're probably going to be looking forward to or they're going to look to get whatever cards they need. But for example, like some regional event level events, there's still going to be players that are going to be bound by some form of budget. And Flunder, like you can still get a really complete deck for a pretty good price.
And especially now with the reprint of Mega Ryza, the whole deck, you can get the whole deck for probably $60 or $70.
Mm-hmm.
What are M-Pens going for right now?
Like $6 or $7?
Yeah.
Maybe 10.
Yeah, because the last time I looked, they were 30 a piece. To be fair, I only need 1 copy.
I don't think they were ever 30, except maybe on pre-sale.
No, I think they were like 60 on pre-sale.
I don't remember.
Yeah, neither do I, because that was a long time ago, and I really wasn't looking to build it, so...
I just know that the quick play spells are like 15. Oh no, M-Pins they're like $11, $12.
Okay.
I know the quick play spells are like 15, and the maps are like 8 or 9.
Yeah.
So...
closer to $100 to build the deck, because then you can just fill up your extra deck with just whatever.
Well, I suppose Prosperity is probably then the most expensive card in the deck.
Oh, yeah. You really need that.
Yeah, I mean, you could run extra.
Yeah, you could just go extra duality, I guess, for a budget version.
Yeah, duality.
Yeah, but if you're on extra duality, then I think that...
Fornicate los dos.
Is extra the one that makes it to where you cannot add cards from your deck to your hand, except by...
No. Hold on, let me pull up extra. You cannot draw any.
Okay, so you can do extra duality.
Yeah, but you can't. And I'm pretty sure you can do prosperity duality.
No, prosperity. Wait. You said prosperity says you can't draw cards for the rest of your turn.
Yeah, so does extra.
Right.
You're not drawing with duality.
That's right. That's right.
So so no matter what, you can do duality plus extrav or prosperity. Prosperity is just so much better.
True.
Because you can dig deeper and select the card rather than just draw the top two, just get the two off the top.
Yeah, for sure. Prosperity is one of the best cards in the game right now. I'm interested to see the usage rates on that card actually.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, if Pot of Desires got limited, I mean, now it's back to 2 again, but I'm sure Prosperity will get some kind of hit at some point.
It definitely should.
Yeah, I think it will.
Next we have Sky Striker, got 3 tops. This is cool, but at the same time worrying because the deck that won the event was just Mystic Mine Turbo.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to be fair with the Sky Striker tops, I'm pretty sure our boy Coleslaw was really happy about that.
Yeah, Austin was very happy. Yeah, we call him Coleslaw, I know. Austin was very happy about that, but
At what cost?
at what cost?
Everything.
Hopefully this gets Mystic Mine banned in the TCG. That would be awesome.
Yeah,
That'd be
I mean,
awesome.
Sky Striker though, like if you bought it right from when it first became tier 1, this pretty much was like the best investment you could ever make for a deck. It's just been good for so long. But Mystic Mine, I certainly have never been a fan of it. It's just terrible to play against. Even though I could play it in the decks that I play, I just don't. 'Cause I just don't.
Right.
But you know, it's
Same.
certainly like people argue like it's like some will say it's a necessary evil, and I'm not sure. I mean,
I think it's a wildly unnecessary evil.
it's funny though because when Mystic Mine first released, that was when Sky Striker was tier 1, and at that point, if it had to get hit, it should have been like right from the get-go actually, because at that point when Striker was already tier 1 and they were playing triple Mystic Mine, it was like Metaverses at 3, it was just insane, and they ended up just putting Metaverse to 1. It's like, wow, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you went from running 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 copies to 5 copies.
Yeah, exactly.
Next we have Drytron with 2. Drytron is a very, very cool top in my opinion.
I mean, they just got Benton, second Benton back,
Mhm.
Yeah, which was huge for the deck.
but they still don't have Eva.
That's fine.
Yeah, I'm perfectly fine with that.
I honestly think that 3 Benton would be too much though.
Yeah, it's one of those things where once you hit as you've said several times before, a
Critical mass.
critical mass, then things just become
Untenable.
ridiculous.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, Drytron's really strong. Even with Ben 10 at 1, just like last one, I still felt like if they win that one, they get to go first. Like they're still very like formidable. And the Eva band, like the one thing. So for example, when I was playing Cyber Dragons, it's like a going second deck. What was really hard against Drytron was, aside from like Herald, is that the orange heralds that were activating from hand, like when you're going second, like you can't stop that, right? And that's what was like just so hard with that deck. Because it's essentially like Gamma, except they control
Right.
houses, and there's still like there's like no going second cards where you can like other than call by, I suppose, but that's just one card, so that's limited.
Right,
So
exactly.
I'm glad
you
Eva's
gotta,
at
you
least
gotta
gone, because then they would just like recycle another orange, and it was just really difficult going second.
Yeah, for sure. The other thing about this deck is it still has the ability to scythe lock.
Yeah,
Just-
I know. And same with like pendulums. Not that they're in this conversation, but it's just I was surprised Scythe was still not banned.
Yeah, it really should have been.
Mhm.
I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure that it wasn't.
To be fair, they did address it, but they didn't like
Mhm.
address it. You know what I mean?
Well, they hit Verte, so they hit the DPE
Yeah.
engine, and they
Well-
didn't touch Scythe.
Ah, I got it. They said there was an elephant in the house, but didn't tell you what room it was in.
They should have at
Something like
least
that.
yeah, they should have at least hit Dagda if they weren't gonna hit ban Scythe, but yeah.
I mean, they could have just banned Scythe. That would have
Yeah, I
been fine
think
too.
that's what they should do, but yeah. We'll just have to
Even the decks that are tagging out Baron in the standby phase of the opponent's turn to summon Scythe.
yeah.
I mean, just unnecessary to leave it into the game, honestly.
Yeah, and it's like in Drytron you can like search off Ben 10 too. So
Yeah.
Yep.
that's pretty bad.
It's ridiculous. Don't even need to run Tacta.
Yeah, and then like I don't know if it's just pendulums, but I forget the name. The synchro they bring off of Hulk, the
GG Wonder
GG,
Magician.
yeah, and then you go into Baron.
Yep.
It's like, wow.
Yeah, and then the Drytron deck actually also runs Baron. So you can literally use Ben 10 to search Scythe, and then use set Scythe, and then activate Baron to pop the Scythe on your field to put it in grave. And then during this, like, build up the rest of your board, and then in standby phase, you can use Baron to summon back Scythe plus the rest of your board, which is multiple negates. So, the best Scythe locking deck in the West.
Yeah.
All right, next I have it pulled up here, at Ignister. Was this a fluke? Or is at Ignister actually like a good deck and I'm just not giving it credit?
I mean, in my opinion, are a good deck. In my opinion.
Yeah, and whenever I look at like meta-analysis of like top ranked players on DB, like there's always at least one player that's like running at Ignister, and if you focus on rogue decks too, then it's like there's actually quite a lot. And from my understanding, like Branded Despia would actually have a hard time outing a rival at Ignister if they were to able to get it to like 5,000, 6,000 attack. I mean,
right.
Like, at the very least they get it at 4,000, but then with whatchamacallit, Ash Dragon, it could get over that. And then I'm not sure if Flunder can out a rival at Ignister if Flunder's going second.
It's the same reason that a lot of Sword Soul decks are running the new Psychic and Punisher card. He's just a big idiot that a lot of decks can't deal with.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I was playing like prior to Branded Fusion coming out, I was like, when I was playing Dogmatic and Vocal Eldritch, I'm like, I literally cannot out this thing unless I just hard draw a Kaiju. So yeah, it's pretty potent if it goes first. Plays a lot of hand traps and it's pretty consistent.
For sure. Next we have Dddd. Only one. This is the remnants of PAX influence, making people love this deck and it coming to light, and then it not really holding up long term.
I mean, don't get us wrong. I really think it's a really cool deck.
Yeah, but if you know where to hit it, it can be pretty fragile.
Yeah,
and it's a hard deck to pilot, and
it is
very five-headed.
Yeah, you have to keep the spreadsheet with you while you're playing.
Come on, just print out a custom map that's just the spreadsheet.
Yeah. That's what you do. There's literally like an entire like flow chart and spreadsheet of like how to pilot the deck under certain circumstances.
Yeah, but I mean that the Dddd Griffin was really, really good card for the deck, and it's interesting. It has some unique cards in terms of like what they do, I guess, for interruptions. Like their field spell is kind of it's like a headache to think it through when you're lining up like doing your plays. But yeah, it's a really cool deck.
Yeah. Next we have Dragon Link Adventure. My brother in Christ, it's 2022.
You're still playing Dragon Link.
Why?
Well, obviously it's still a good deck.
I mean, it's not terrible.
To be fair, it's also one of those decks that if you pick it up, because right now it's really cheap, you know you got a deck for a while.
Yeah, because right now the deck is mostly rogue.
Yeah, it's same thing with like Dino and a bunch of other decks are just like, they're good enough to where they can still compete even though they're rogue, and you can even top some locals with them. And obviously you can also get to day 2 of a YCS with them.
Top 32 of a YCS.
Yeah, top 32 of a YCS with them. But you know, it's just one of those things, man. It's a good deck, it's a good package. I think part of the reason why it's so prevalent and just continuously comes back again and again and again, it's just how versatile the actual deck itself is, because the only locking the deck does against the player is Dark Dragons out of the extra deck.
Right.
And that's if you go down the rocket line.
Right. Yeah, the deck is definitely okay. I think the adventure engine helps it out a lot.
Especially that they don't need their normal summon.
Right. And the last deck is honestly maybe the most interesting deck in the entire top cut. ABC Adventure. And I'm sure that this deck was playing at least one Therian King Regulus.
Yeah,
At
no,
least
it was. I played against one just like online, and it was like I thought it was like so cool. Like the Therian stuff is like really good with this deck because it just like equips the pieces essentially, like the
Right.
ABC pieces rather, and it just like gets your bodies, and it's nuts, especially with the Brave Engine stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that this deck is very. Excuse me. I think that the deck is very. It's very hit or miss. I think that this dude saw Union Hanger in every opening hand in his entire rounds of Swiss.
it's entirely possible.
Maybe. I'm not saying that you can't win without Union Hanger, but Union Hanger's a heck of a card.
It helps.
Yeah. I love the deck. I really do. I think that ABC Adventure is very, very strong, actually. I think that the deck really lives or dies by seeing Union Hanger, though. So, but
Yeah.
I mean, if you got the Union Hanger, though, you got a heck of a board.
Yeah, no fooling.
So I want to take just a moment before we go into a little bit more discussion about meta-analysis to thank our sponsor. So a huge thank you, of course, to ETB Games in Alexandria, Louisiana. ETB Games is our locals. They sponsor the podcast, and they are a great one-stop shop to go to get everything that you need for all the games that you love. You can get singles and sealed product, deck boxes, sleeves, playmats, binders, and all of those things for all the card games that you love, like Yu-Gi-Oh!, Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, Digimon, and whatever else. They also have everything that you need for all of your tabletop gaming needs, such as they have figurines, paint for figurines, dice, big tabletop mats, and the guidebooks and everything that you need for all those games that you love. So be sure to check them out, ETB Games. Their link is in the description down below. And without further ado, let's get back on into the episode. So I think that the coolest revelation coming out of this event was the prevalence and the come up of the two different engines, the Punk engine and the Therian engine. I think that this was the first time that we really see a huge showing from these. And it says a lot that they took up the percentage of top cut that they did. Even if the Therian engine was more of a splash in a few different decks, I think that it is strong enough now to where we can say that reliably that it is good, at least as an engine, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the Punk engine and talk about what makes it so good and so powerful. So, of course, you have the Zia Min. Having the ability to e-telly the card out is obviously extremely strong. And it searches out the Foxy Tune, which lets you get further into your lines of play, and you still haven't used your normal summon. So it pairs extremely well with the Adventure engine. I think overall that this is maybe one of the strongest decks in the meta. It's a kind of a new arrival, but overall, I think that this is a deck that if you're playing on a competitive level, you absolutely have to respect it, and you have to know what the deck does. That way you can know how to properly interrupt it. Is that a fair assessment?
I mean, yeah, you put it very succinctly. I can't think of anything to add to that.
Yeah, no, that's great.
So, the Therian engine is interesting, and I like that it's being splashed in a variety of different ways. It's being splashed in the Plant Link deck because of the Lily Borea being able to be searched in the Plant Link deck. Then you also have it being played in things like ABC Adventure. And then you also have it being played as a much bigger package in the Punk deck. So you end up with, you can play it either in specific decks and specific lists where, let's say I want to run Earth Machine. I played against Therian Earth Machine this past weekend at the Case Tournament.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's a very cool deck. It really is. So seeing that and seeing the splashability of this engine throughout multiple different decks like I said, Earth Machine, ABC, decks like that, you have the opportunity to play this Therian King Regulus for this powerful negate, which is something that the Earth Machine deck has been missing up to this point. The deck can deep draw through the deck, draw into multiple hand traps, and do a lot. But the one thing that the deck had trouble doing was putting out a significant negate on turn 0. And now they have the ability to do that, which is not the strongest end board in the world, but it's a lot better than what they had.
Which was nothing.
Pretty much.
Yeah, and Cyber Dragons also play a small Therian package, just the Regulus and the Field Spell, because it's kind of interesting, because if you equip like original Cyber Dragon with Therian King, or I guess technically it has to be Therian King, but because of Chimera Tech Fortress, you can actually still contact fuse even if Cyber Dragon's like an equip spell with other machines. So then you can, with other machines on the field, then you make Fortress, and technically Regulus and Fortress are both level 8, so you could, if you wanted to, like overlay into like Dingirsu and like sell a card. So it's cool, and the battle protection is actually quite nice as well. I mean, because typically like Cyber Dragon Infinity, it's pretty weak. Like usually it ends up being like 2500 attack, and then you have All Mirage that would provide like a card destruction protection, and now you have the Field Spell for battle protection. So it's kind of nice, but it's not nearly as good as all the other decks we've talked about though.
Yeah, I think that's worth mentioning though, right? I think you said you have a regional this coming weekend.
Yeah, and then if I don't know if you also saw that new card that's coming out in Animation Chronicles. I think it's Clockwork something. Essentially, turns every every monsters to machine. So that's good for Cyber Dragons. And then it has like an additional effect where you can like banish it from the grave, discard a card, and then I think it was like add an Earth Machine from deck to hand, which means you could add Therian King. So it's pretty funny. I'm looking forward to that card. It's gonna be funny.
Yeah, we actually haven't covered that card yet on the podcast. Normally we cover all the new card releases, but we took last Friday off just to kind of give ourselves a break, to be honest with you, because we record a lot.
Yeah.
So we took last Friday off, and
we just haven't had a chance to talk about the card yet, but that card is crazy.
Yeah, that card's really cool, and it gives you a reason to run Foolish Barrow of Goods in a lot of different machine decks.
Yeah, and it's funny because that card was an anime card, and someone in the Cyber Dragon Facebook group, like exactly a year ago, posted saying like, "Oh, imagine if this card was like printed in real life," and everyone's like, "Oh, you're crazy! This card's too good." And then they actually made it better than what it was in the anime because of that add Earth Machine effect. I think the original in the anime was just purely like everything turns to machines, and then the attack modification, which is kind of cool as well. And for Cyber Dragons, though, it's funny that attack boost can actually be a downside as well, because for machine dupe, the machine has to be 500 or less attack, and then now none of them will be. Although the other thing, Cyber Dragons actually, weirdly enough, what they struggle with is like against high attack monsters actually, because like getting Seeger and Rampage is ideal, but that's actually sort of hard to do to get enough extenders for that, like consistently. I mean. So Infinity is typically like 2500, and now that we lost Anaconda and there's no Dragoon to pop multiple monsters, like that attack boost will actually end up, it's a big swing, right? It's basically 1,000 attack swing because your opponents lose 500 attack. So it's gonna be pretty funny. It's essentially, for Cyber Dragons at least, it would serve almost like kind of like a Dark Ruler no more, because like they're forced to negate that, otherwise like just all their monsters are gonna be sent to the graveyards.
Definitely. It's going to be an interesting card, and I think that plus the Therian package is really breathes a lot of life into both Earth Machines and Cyber Dragons. So could you see yourself as a Cyber Dragon player playing the Therian King Regulus and things like that in the actual Cyber Dragon deck?
Yeah, no, I actually play it right now. Just like 2 Regulus and like 2 to 3 field spells, depending on how much you can fit in your deck. Sometimes it's dead, but it's nice to have like another negate now that Dragoon is gone. So I would say, like, obviously they're expensive, so for people worried whether they need it, like you don't need it to play Cyber Dragons, of course, but I would say for it to be like the most optimal build, like most likely, I would say it's good to have.
Definitely. So, and the other thing here to talk about is not only so you have the ABC also, which it adds another layer to that deck. That deck already has the ability to pop cards and banish cards, and now you're adding in the negate, which is just powerful. And especially when you end up pulling multiple negates with the Griffin Rider also. So,
and they typically also end with IP as well. So it's like another...
the ability to go into Underworld Goddess.
Yeah, I guess suppose so, or like a classic unicorn play, but it's and just ABC Dragon Buster just floats. It's really cool.
Yeah, I think that deck is really cool, and I would love to see more of it in the future.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if we will, because like I said, the deck kind of lives and dies by ABC, or lives and dies by Union Hanger, but it's definitely interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So, of all of these decks, which one are we most surprised to see in Top Cut? Swordsoul Tenyi, Punk, Branded, Flu, Striker, Drytron, Adignister, Dddd, Dragon Link, and ABC. They're not necessarily in Top Cut, but maybe most surprised by the amount of representation, or surprised by the lack of representation, or are there any big surprise takeaways that you might have from this?
For me, I personally, for the ones where there's just one deck, I actually would say it's not too surprising, at least in terms of like if you were to pick a rogue deck to make it, like these were it. Like you basically got all the like best rogue decks. I think maybe the Punk having 7 decks, I was surprised. I knew it was going to be good. I didn't think it would be this good. I thought I would expect a bit more Flunder instead, just because I figured a lot of people might play that. But
yeah.
So my thing about the amount of Punk is I knew there was going to be Punk Therian and Punk Adventure, but Punk Adventure and Punk Therian only take up 5 of the 7 Punk decks. So I don't know what those other 2 were.
Yeah.
Like were they
right, yeah.
Punk, pure Punk? Is Punk just that good by itself?
I know.
I don't know.
Yeah, there used to be like Punk Eldritch way back when Punk first came out, but I don't think that was it for this one.
I don't know. Punk is it's just cool, you know?
It rocks.
Yeah. Punk, it rocks. That was very funny, Caleb. Do it
someone
again.
made like a Cyber Dragon Punk deck, so they call it Cyberpunk. So I was like, oh, that's pretty cool.
Oh my god!
It's like saying Adamancipator rocks. It's like, oh, dude.
Yeah, some of the deck names have been really creative.
I'm surprised to see... I'm not necessarily surprised to see Sky Striker in Top Cut, but I'm surprised to see 3 of them in Top Cut, and I'm very disappointed in the community that it won.
Oh, the funny part is only one of them was Adventure Sky Striker, too.
That's actually not super surprising. I mean, I guess it kind of is, but the other one cut all the adventure cards for like 3 Mystic Mine, 3 Demise of the Land, and it's like...
Fair. That's fair.
So...
Yeah, I didn't expect 3 either. I expected just like 1. I find it just always like, there's always just like 1 striker that tops, but...
Yeah.
Only 3 things in life are guaranteed.
Yeah, exactly.
Taxes, and there's going to be a Sky Striker player in top.
Yeah.
At least 1.
Are we surprised by multiple Drytron? I gotta say, I'm really not.
I'm not.
I'm not either.
It's a cool deck.
It's a really powerful deck.
Mm-hmm. Like, I always respected Drytron. Even with Ben 10 at 1, I like super respected it, so yeah.
You have to, I think.
Yeah, it's just
because
so
you don't,
great going first.
It's just the end of your day.
Yeah, if you don't respect.
And I think that the thing that really... Something that stands out to me here is, did either of you see the deck profile for the winning Sky Striker list?
No.
No, not yet.
Somebody took a screenshot from the deck profile and added up the cost of his deck.
Oh yeah,
I did see that though. I think someone tweeted that or something.
$9,100.
Which somebody had mentioned that was more than a full cost
Dddd
deck back when Gold Sarcophagus was a prize card.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy. I'm not gonna lie. Pretty crazy.
Yeah,
So
I think I saw in the Facebook comments, someone was saying he runs a locals or a card shop. I don't know how accurate that is. That's what I read. Yeah.
it's not helped by just all the ulti Sky Strikers are close to 2K on their own.
Yeah.
And the Starlight Roses. Between the Starlight Roses and the ulti Kagaris are like 250, 300. Ulti Shizuku's, ulti Kaina, ulti all that. You're looking at like close to 3K just between the Starlights and the ultis.
Yeah.
And that's not including other things that are not within engine.
Yeah, like Pot of Prosperity if he was running them, stuff like that.
I don't think he's running Prosperities, but it's like Starlight Lightning Storms and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know?
Secret Forbidden Droplets. Or no, Ulti Droplets.
Yeah, Ulti Droplets, Ulti Imperms. It's just like, sheesh. People just got it.
Yeah.
To be fair, a good chunk of those cards, though, do have far cheaper printings. Like, you have the Super and the Gold Rare Imperms. I think Rose comes as a Super or a Common?
I think it comes as a Super, maybe an Ultra.
Yeah. And I think someone actually asked, like, how much would it be for the lowest, like, cheapest variant? Someone said, like, it was, like, $600. I'm not sure how accurate that was, but yeah. Certainly a big difference from 9,000.
For sure. So, do we think that at this point, to play an optimal build of any deck, looking at these decks, looking at these lists, do we think that Yu-Gi-Oh! Is cost prohibitive at this point? I think that there's something to be said for that, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, because how many of these decks were not running Droplet? Because I know that's easier to count.
I have no idea. I haven't looked at every deck list so far. I know that
like, if someone was to tell me, like, 2 of these decks did not have playset Droplets, I wouldn't be surprised.
I think the top 4 Swordsoul Tenyi deck, I don't think he was actually on Droplets.
Well, hey, there you go.
There's one. And I doubt the Fluandereese decks were on Droplets. But then they were on Prosperities. So
it evens out.
Yeah.
Plus the decks that are running Prosperity and Droplet.
Yeah.
But I
don't know.
Yeah, but I really do think it's Prosperity, Droplet, are like the 2 main cards I can think of that are very... and Lightning Storm. That are very cost prohibitive.
But when you look at decks like Dddd and Ad Ignister, I don't think that those are extremely... I don't think that those are, like, super expensive decks to play, you know?
Well,
I think it just pretty much just purely comes from the staples, essentially, for those decks.
Right.
Because aren't Ash Blossom still $30 a piece?
Yeah.
For the common?
Yeah, 25, 30, yeah.
For the common?
That's why I run Secrets. That way I don't have to worry about that.
This man!
And all I have to worry about is there being an ulti or a Ghost Ash. That's all I have to worry about.
Yeah, well, we still don't know what the other ultis are for the next OTS. We just know Fallen of Alba. So who knows? Maybe it actually will be Ash. I mean, they put Ghost Bell as Starlight. So I feel like they're just
all I have to worry about is ulti Ghost Starlight.
OTS, ulti Ash, OTS, ulti Ash. Speak it into existence, just to give them a bad day.
But the secret rares just float to the top of my deck. It's awesome.
It's physics, yeah.
So what would we say are the best ratios right now, or not even ratios, but some of the best cards that you can make sure that you're running in your deck list to give you the best chance to compete with the meta as it's shaped right now? Would either of you two have any ideas as far as cards that you think really you should be considering in your deck list?
I mean, I think Ash will always be number 1. It's generally the most played hand trap in every format, especially right now. I mean, Brand of Fusion's everywhere, and it's just really good against that.
There was one card that you said I should be maining, not siding, and I kind of went, I'm not sure about that. And then yesterday proved that Saturday when we had that case tourney, proved that I'm dumb and don't know what I'm talking about, and you might actually have an idea in DD Crow. Jesus Christ, that card came up every time I drew it.
Yeah, that card, turns out that card's really good.
Yeah.
Activate Branded Red? No.
Yeah, I went 2-1 in my branded matchups over the weekend because I saw Dddd Crow. Literally every time they had branded in red, I had either Dddd Crow or Call by the Grave in my hand. It was awesome.
Yeah, when I did my analysis of like most played hand traps among the Nats list, Dddd Crow was actually second after Ash, and Ghost Spell sort of fell in favor. And Token Collector was also pretty popular too, but Imperm's always up there as well. Imperm is personally just my favorite card, like in general of all time.
Yeah.
It's a very cool looking card.
It is. It's a Cyber Dragon card by art, so maybe that's why I like it. But I think it's just.
It's a Cyber Dragon card without actually being a Cyber Dragon card.
Imagine if you could search it, but even then it wouldn't. Yeah, but it's certainly a cool.
Oh my goodness! You already have Infinity. Don't get greedy.
Yeah.
I think that Dddd Crow has to be considered, and I think that.
And the best part about Dddd Crow is that they're dirt cheap.
Yep.
Yeah, they are.
Lots of.
And I think Ash and Imperm also are some of the most powerful. That was my hand trap lineup this past weekend. I ran Ash, Imperm, and Dddd Crow in my main, and it worked out really well for me.
I was actually also maining 2 Token Collector because I'm Dino, so Token Collector is also an extender.
Yeah, it's brutal to play against as a Sword Soul player. I think that I forgot my train of thought.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. There was definitely something that I was going to say right here, and I don't remember what it was. Ghost Bell.
Ghost Bell.
So you mentioned that Ghost Bell is falling in popularity at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that might be because, while yes, it is a very good card against the branded deck, and it's good against other decks too, for sure, but I think the thing about Ghost Bell is that most of the time when you have an opportunity, like when they activate a card that would give you the opportunity to activate it, they either chain block around it, or they have branded Lost up and you can't do it.
Yeah. So I think Dddd Crow sort of became more popular instead.
Right. So, and honestly, shout out to Hani. Foolish Return is also a very funny and cool card. So, what's crazy is Hani was playing, I don't know if y'all watch his deck profile, his deck was almost minimum rarity.
Oh.
Which is hilarious.
Like, he was running like common Ash Blossoms and stuff like that. Yeah, everything in his deck was like lowest rarity.
Just to T-pose on people?
I don't know. I genuinely don't know. But I added it up at lowest rarity and it was still like over $1,000.
Wow.
So, yeah, that's kind of the state of Yu-Gi-Oh! At the moment. It's interesting that I feel like so many things are competitive and so many things are viable, and you can get away with so much, and at the same time, I really have my reservations about the cost of the game right now, because although I'm an established player who is running a Sword Soul deck that costs probably close to $2,000, not everybody has that ability. So it worries me when the game gets expensive like this, where you have all these splashable engines like Punk. Punk is getting expensive. Foxy Tunes are $20. Things like that. Deer Notes are like $8-10.
To be fair, I think a good chunk of that will change come September, October, November, when we get the next 10.
Yeah, and that happened last year too, right? Because the Tri Brigade stuff all got reprinted, the Virtual World stuff all got reprinted, and the decks
got reprinted.
Yeah, and a lot of decks and a lot of cards got really cheap.
Mm-hmm.
So it's possible. But I worry, because even if you look at this time last year, you didn't have the game have such a high cost.
Yeah.
Virtual World was a relatively cheap deck to put together.
Mm-hmm.
Cry Brigade, when it first came out, was cheap. It got expensive over time, but at first it was cheap. And then you're just looking at staples, essentially. I mean, at the time, when Tri Brigade was at its most expensive, I added up my deck and it was like $700, I think, $600. And it was higher rarity. And now, like I said, I just added up my Sword Soul deck and it was like close to $1,500 to $2,000. Now, granted, I have picked up many things since then, like Secret Rare Ash Blossoms, which inflate the price. But even so, when you're looking at a Tri Brigade deck that was running like a Secret Rare access code or things like that, or even the summer before that, or maybe the fall before that, when you're looking at like Zoo Eldritch, like that was a cheap deck.
Mm-hmm.
And you just don't see as many decks right now that are just cheap and competitive. Sure, you have your outliers like Dddd and Adignister, and honestly, Drytron is not the craziest deck except for the Diviners,
Yeah.
which are spiking back up now. But overall, it worries me about the future of the game. So unless the reprint sets the Megatins, and which the Megatins are slated to reprint a lot of extremely high impact, expensive, powerful cards. But even with the Megatins and even with Maximum Gold, unless Konami changes their reprint policies and the way that they structure some of these products, I genuinely do not see it getting any better for quite a while.
Yeah, and also inevitably they always print the next, staples that you need to have, which will also be expensive. Although at least they're sort of changing it up for this Megatin, where they're actually reprinting certain cards that, like, traditionally wouldn't have been in like a Megatin, because they're including like something from like even more previous sets than just like the past year. So that's a good start. They really need like Dude 2.0, but I know that the sales for that initially weren't very good, so maybe that's why they've been hesitant. But that's like that. The value of Dude is just so good over time.
Oh yeah,
holy! Like I should have bought 3 boxes of Dude when it first came out, but eventually, like just like over time in the last 2 years, I probably pretty much ended up buying like majority of the singles from that set, and spending more that way. I should have just bought the 3 boxes right from the beginning.
Yeah, well, right when I got back into the game, our Walmart had some Dual Devastators, and this was like 2020.
Mm-hmm.
So it was old at that point, and I bought 3 of them. They were on sale, so I paid around $100 for them. When normally they would have been like a 120-ish, 125, 130 after tax. So I paid right at like $98, I think, after taxes. And I have gotten my money's worth out of that time and time again. Between the Ash Blossoms that I have now traded away, just different things like Solemn Strikes, DD Crows, Ghost Bells, Ghost Ogres. I mean, the usage
Gamma Seals, like there's some good cards in there.
Was Gamma Seal in there?
Yep. I had to buy them as singles because I couldn't find. Yeah.
Yeah, the product was people didn't buy a lot of it because there wasn't really any gambling involved, if we're being honest.
It's just so funny that, we need more of them, but people just want to gamble, it turns out.
The way that you could structure that product is to do, instead of like, I think there was 56 guaranteed cards in that product, but instead of 56 guaranteed cards, you do like 30 guaranteed cards, and then like a pack of 10 random cards that could be 10 of like 40 or 50 different cards.
Yeah.
And put them all as Ultra or Prismatic Secret or something like that.
Yeah, no, I agree. And another thing is, like, I wish Megatins would bring back the promos as well. And good promos too.
Yeah.
Right. Now, the product that I wish they would make that they won't is, me and Caleb discussed this on the podcast before, a time capsule. So whatever Time Wizard format they want to promote at that moment in time, they do a time capsule for that format. So for example, if they wanted to do GOAT format, they could do a time capsule where you get like 3 decks. You get a GOAT deck, you get a Warrior Toolbox, and a Chaos deck. And so it's like 3 decks, kind of like what they do with these Speed Duel Battle City boxes and things like that, where you get multiple decks that are playable for you and your friends, and then you get a few packs that are essentially randomized to where there's like 24 secret rares and you get like 8 of them. And if they did that for the different retro formats, imagine if they did one of those for Edison. That would go over so well. And it'd offer reprints for a lot of more expensive cards for those formats. Things like Metamorphosis, things like Trap Dust Shoot, things like Royal Oppression. These are all cards that are close to $10 or higher, $15, for no reason other than
has been reprinted in
forever,
a decade.
Because they're banned, right? So that's something that I would like to see, but we'll see if that ever happens. So thank you so much for joining us. We would love for you to take just a moment before we close out the episode to plug all of your stuff. Where can people find you and your content?
Just YouTube, HakunaMyData. I do have Twitter, although I'm not really active, but you can follow me on there too if you want.
We will absolutely also leave a link to your YouTube channel in the description down below. And for those that want just a little bit more info about the content that you'll find there, like I said, it's a lot of competitive data based off of both dueling book results and actual event coverage. Things like what side deck cards are pretty prevalent in the format, things like overall what decks are people playing. A lot of the top 25, I think, from Dueling Book, you use a lot of that data, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, from YGeoScope. Great site.
Absolutely. And I would absolutely recommend checking out the information that is provided there, because it is some of the most insightful information and in-depth analysis of meta that you will actually find on YouTube. It is personally one of my favorite channels on YouTube, and I do not say that lightly.
Aw, thank you.
Of course. So, with all that said, let's go ahead and close out the podcast. I want to do the podcast question of the day real quick. So, the last question that we did was, what is your most memorable moment from locals? We had some great answers. Watching a Blue Eyes player activate Mystic Mine while both controlled one monster and then passing? That's rough. Watching the guy who never played Flower Guardian play my buddy. He was playing Code Talkers. Round 1 and turn 1 ended with 10 minutes left in round. Big oof. Prohibition, call Eldritch, activate Mystic Mine. There's a lot of Mystic Mine in these answers. Nibiru 4 times in 2 games. Holy. Let's see. First time I went for the first time to locals. I was 10 to 12, and the dude straight up gave me 200 plus cards with a lot of Blackwings and stuff. And this is 2008 to 2010, so very cool of somebody to do that. Somebody actually tried to negate Exodia with Divine Wrath. Yep, can't do that. Somebody said that they actually saw somebody hard draw all 5 pieces of Exodia in their opening hand. No cheating, no stacking, just do it.
Jesus, some people are just better, I guess.
Yeah. Opening packs at their locals and pulling a collector's rare torrential tribute. And just awesome. 2 ultis getting pulled back to back. Yeah, that's awesome. Personally, I saw a moment over the weekend where 2 guys were playing Flip It or Rip It. And the last pack, the dude was like, okay, last pack in the box. This one's a Rip It. And they're doing Flip It or Rip It. And he rips 1 card, flips 1 card. Rips 1 card, flips 1 card. He rips 1, flips it, and then gets the next one that he's supposed to rip. He's like, something's telling me not to rip this card. And flips it, and it was a Starlight.
Oh.
And he dodged the bullet by this much. I mean, so close. So, and today's podcast question of the day is a pretty basic one, but what do you think is actually the best deck in the meta right now? Because I don't really think that it's necessarily a set answer. I don't think that this is a clear-cut answer. I would say Sword Soul, but I'm a little biased. So.
Yeah. I would probably also say Sword Soul, but that's just my own personal experience up against Despian Therian.
Right. And what about you? I'm interested.
Yeah, I think it's Sword Soul or Branded Despia. Just Can't go wrong with you,
Yeah.
Dan.
All right. Well, everybody, be sure to answer the podcast question today. Of course, in all the usual places. It'll be on Twitter. It will be in our Discord server, which you should absolutely join if you're not there. And of course, as we leave, thank you again so much to our patrons. Thank you to our sponsors. Thank you, of course, to Mr. HakunaMyData for joining us today. And with all of that said, of course, thank you all so much for joining us, and we will catch you Friday.
Take care, everybody.
Thanks, guys.